think this is important for like millennials and Gen Z. I believe in the preaching of God's word. I do it every Sunday, but I haven't used YouTube just to, push, just to take the Bible and slap it over people's head. I like the subversive storytelling. I like winning them over with just my life. And so that's kind of always been my strategy of just like, here's my life. If you're ever interested in what does it look like for a pastor who's also bivocational, who also does this and that and loves Disneyland, I've just kind of always done that.
Frank here with another episode of Modern Church Leader. Excited about today's topic. I'm kind of a digital guy, and I get to talk to another digital guy. I'm joined by Trey Van Camp. How's it going, Trey?
Hey, Frank. I'm super grateful for you guys and how you resource the church. Thank you for inviting me on here, man. Yes, I'm a digital native, I guess you can say.
I don't know if I was a digital native, but I'm definitely a digital guy. So nice. I'll just put myself in that bucket, but
I was born in 92, so I actually had a life before the digital world, but not too much.
92. I mean, you look young, but that's younger than I would have thought. So
coming up on 30, man, in a few months.
The beard.
Yes.
Oh man, I will be 44 in March.
Let's go.
So, my beard is showing it off. So
I love it.
But anyways, we're going to talk about digital stuff. But I guess, before we jump into kind of the meat, tell folks a little bit about you and how you got into church planning and becoming a pastor and kind of leading your church now.
Yeah, I'll try to do the short version. I'm a pastor, so we'll see how this goes. But I'm Trey Van Camp, so I'm actually a fourth generation Southern Baptist pastor. It's in the blood. None of us have ever encouraged the next generation to do it. It really has been a call from the Lord. If you're a pastor's kid, you get that. You see enough behind the scenes, you go, all right, Lord, is there anything else? Because I'm down to do kind of anything else except pastoral ministry, because it can get kind of rough, right? So, when I was actually, I got saved. It's the typical story. Went to church whenever the doors were open. But my father actually was just a deacon until I was 12. And then he got called into ministry to plant a church. So junior high, right when puberty was setting in, all my life was kind of weird anyways. We threw in this wrench to plant a church. And so it was just us as a family. This was back in 03, 04. They didn't have these complex systems and all the great networks that help people plant churches like they do today. And so it was literally our family. We did everything. I was the tech guy. My dad was the preacher. My mom and my sisters were the singers. And then we started, and so we did assign free pancakes on Easter Sunday, 2004 at a local elementary school, and the rest is history. So pretty crazy.
That's how you started. Free pancakes.
50 people showed up. 50 people, and then we just started rolling. And
that's awesome.
My dad specifically, I credit him to this all the time. Right before we started, when he told the family this is what we're going to be doing, he said, now, son, and my sisters, but he said, hey, I want you every morning and every night to ask God for your spiritual gift, because you have one and you're going to need it to serve this church. So every morning, every night, I would wake up. It'd be the first thing I would say, God, please reveal to me my spiritual gift. That's it. But I made sure I did it every morning, every night. About a year after that, after I kind of been doing this every morning, every night, I went to a youth conference, Discipleship Now. Pastor preached from 1 Kings 18, and my heart just opened up to the Lord, and I really felt the Holy Spirit telling me, I'm calling you to pastoral ministry. And so we're Southern Baptist. So I walked down the aisle. I gave my life. I already gave my life to the Lord, but I gave it to ministry. So fast forward, started preaching at 16, had my own ministry at 17, preaching once a month at our high school, all the while trying to improve my dad's church in the media department. So I picked up a camera. I learned Photoshop from a high school elective class, went to college at California Baptist University, loved all of my time there, got to be a youth pastor at a revitalization church. And I said, Lord, I will do anything except plant a church, because I've seen, the highs and lows of planting a church, and I just am like, I can't do it. There's no way. I remember one summer in high school, I had to sell my truck in order for us to eat food that summer. So I was like, I'm not down for this church plant life where you have no structure. You really don't know if you're going to make it. But the Lord had different plans. So I actually in college was like, okay, I'm going to be a missionary. And those doors kept closing. And I had a great job opportunity to work for somebody that's really quite famous. And I turned it down. And because my wife was like, what do you really want to do? I was like, yeah, I want to plant a church back in my hometown. So that's what we've done. I have I have a beautiful wife, Jordan, and then I have Faith, Selah, and Trinity. I have 3 girls. We're done. So girl squad over here. But yeah,
I got I got 3 boys. So we're done
nice.
as well.
Can't relate to you at all, right? Totally different. Everything's pink and unicorns and dolls and princesses over here. And
Meanwhile,
so
I had 5 broken bones in the first 5 years of life.
Oh,
so.
Nice. My middle one, it gets close. I'm just grateful she's not a boy to where she doesn't go the extra mile. But yeah, so we planted my church in 2016 in a movie theater. And towards the end of 2016 is when I picked up YouTube, which I imagine we'll be talking about. And so I've been planting a church, being the lead pastor for 6 years now, and on the YouTube space for 5. Okay. So that's a quick speed up of where I'm at today.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Is your hometown the same town that Dad planted a church, or your family planted a church?
Yeah, good question. Okay. So he planted in the southern part of Queen Creek. So it's a suburb of Phoenix. And so where I planted is the northern part where there's younger families. It's close to a university. There's a lot more white collar. There really is like a dividing line. The road is called Riggs Road. Everything south of Riggs, which is who my dad reaches, are blue collar, cowboy, like they'll ride their horse to church kind of people. Yes. And the people I reach, they're on their phones. They have seen pictures of horses, but they've never ridden one kind of thing. Right. It's really kind of funny, the divide. But Phoenix is getting so big so fast. Our city has blown up this past decade because there's just no more space. So they keep being spread out more and more. So we're a really fast growing city and community. And so we just really saw that there's a big demographic in Queen Creek that my dad's church wasn't reaching, that I was built to reach because it's me. And so that was the strategy. Yeah. I love that. Do you and your dad share notes, like work together? Like how does that dynamic happen? When I first launched, we tried to do like a campus kind of vibe where we kind of did the same sermon series, and it just didn't work out. We are such different people. To the glory of God, he's an incredible guy, and I'm just totally different than him. I'm a lot more. I need to know what I'm preaching in the next 12 months. My dad just wants to know like the next 12 days. So Totally different style. So it never worked out. So we eventually kind of became completely our own thing. And we just, we're together in mission. We do a lot of like, outreach projects. Our churches combine together and stuff like that. But we are separate, but we always say that's extended family. It's the mother church, or I joke it's the father church because it's where my dad pastors. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, I mean, you mentioned YouTube, and I think, the episode in my mind as we're chatting is really all about helping pastors maybe understand how the digital space can help extend the message. Yeah. And that's what you're really, really good at and have spent a number of years kind of working at via your YouTube, like vlogging and social media, blogging, websites, all the things that you've kind of either helped your dad's church with or now do at your church. So I'd love to just what got you into it? What got you into, what is vlogging? What got you into vlogging, and how does it tie back to being a pastor? Well, vlogging has really morphed a lot, the definition of that in the past, even since I began 5 years ago. So I was the guy who never watched YouTube. In college, all my friends watched YouTube. They would reference videos, and I just thought it was so dumb. I was that nerd in class. I turned everything before it was due. I was just that guy. So I never was on YouTube because it seemed like a productivity killer for me. Yeah. And so, but then in 2016, I was randomly online and I stumbled upon it's a long story, but I stumbled upon Gary Vee, which I imagine a lot of your listeners have heard of before. And so I was like, man, who is this charismatic guy talking about social media strategy? So I was kind of sucked in. A guy that's into social media and the internet and connection and just a big personality online. And this was 2016. He wasn't big. I think I followed him when there was 45,000 subscribers on YouTube, which now I don't know what it's at. It's a couple million, I think, at least. So Yeah, he's just a hustle, which some of that stuff you can take and leave. And, he has quite the language. But there was a lot of stuff there. I was thinking, this church leaders need to be listening to this guy. So it was like for a month, I was listening to his content. And then he interviewed on his Ask Gary Vee show, Casey Neistat. And so I thought, let me check out this guy. He seems kind of strange and different and eccentric. And I was like, I love this. It's just the storytelling. Vlogging is just essentially taking the camera and pointing at yourself and just telling the story of your day. But it's not just like, oh, I woke up and brushed my teeth. No, there's an act 1, an act 2, and an act 3. There really is this beginning, middle, end. There's a journey that the character is going on. And I just couldn't stop watching his videos. And about a month later, because I'm a church planner, so this is what church planners do. We don't like debate and think about, we just try everything, like we don't have committees like that. Yeah. We can't afford that. We just go and do. And so I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so I just bought a camera, and then a week later I uploaded my first vlog, and it was pretty terrible, but I went on an Israel trip at the end of 2016. And that's when I was like, I'm doing this forever. So I started like daily vlogging. I've in the past 5 years, I've uploaded over 780 videos.
Wow.
And so I've just done it a lot for a long time. I think a 3-year stretch, I uploaded 3 videos every week, like never missed. That gets tiring. But
yeah, that's intense. That's a lot of work. Because
it's a lot of work.
Recording it, you do a lot of post-production, like editing,
yes,
and cutting and putting it together so that it's kind of packaged well, right?
I love the editing process. That's like where I go into my zone and I just feel good about life. It's the hobby it's the gift that keeps on giving. So what's helpful is when I record videos, I'm already thinking of the edit and I'm thinking of the type of song. And so they're just 5 to 10 minute videos of something. A lot of it's like behind the scenes of me trying to start a church. We started just not with a ton of people. And so that's just kind of the whole journey of this church planter, trying new things. Many videos, I'm like, we don't have any traditions. We're trying to start one. Here's this thing called the Viking Feast. I don't know if it's going to work out. Well, now we just finished our 5th annual one, and it's just so fun that I recorded the first one ever. And so people have seen the progress of that type of event. And I've really opened up the curtain on Mondays, when I just feel like quitting. And so I'm just kind of vulnerable, and I just kind of mention that, like, man, this is a lot tougher than I thought. I thought our church would grow faster than it did. And so what I've always done is just kind of share my life. I haven't really used YouTube, and I think this is important for like millennials and Gen Z. I haven't used it directly. I believe in the preaching of God's word. I do it every Sunday, but I haven't used YouTube just to, push, just to take the Bible and slap it over people's head. Right. I like the subversive storytelling. I like winning them over with just my life. And so that's kind of always been my strategy of just like, here's my life. If you're ever interested in what does it look like for a pastor who's also bivocational, who also does this and that and loves Disneyland, I've just kind of always done that. And so it's consistently been a blessing to my family, And so I've actually started developing courses for other pastors because a bunch of pastors reached out to me, and it's never mega church pastors that have a team. It's pastors of churches of 100 or less, and were saying, I don't have a team either. I was like, dude, I don't have a team. This is all me. And so I've been able to show them, here's the camera to get. I just shoot in auto. I don't know all the camera stuff like everybody talks about. Here's just the story structure that I use. Right. Here's how to edit quickly on Premiere Pro. And so it's really cool. So I have like a squad of like 75 pastors that we meet like once a month on Zoom, and we just kind of talk through content strategy. And it's been a huge blessing. That's like been my favorite part, is just I'm connected to all these pastors and ministry leaders throughout the globe, honestly, not just America. And it's just so cool to kind of journey this thing together.
What are those guys picking up from you? Like, I'm sure they're not all doing the exact same thing, because it kind of takes a life of its own for the person, I think, and how it plays out and what they do. Like those 75 guys, what are they doing? Like, how are they taking your, what you're teaching them and your example, and kind of gone out and put it into practice in their church and in their life?
Sometimes it's just straight up like motivation, like, hey, there's a group that's going through this. And so they just needed that accountability. They needed that encouragement. Like we have a big pocket that are missionaries. And so they all kind of strategize together, because how you make missionary videos is different than how you make a church plant video, which is different than how you make a video for those who have established churches. So sometimes it's just straight up, I'm a resource for them. Here's the camera to get, here's the new thing. I have it in my course. I have 9 different like top YouTube creators, and I go, okay, these are all non-believers, but this is 9 different styles of videos. Pick one or two and combine them. So a lot of my guys just do the live, where they're just live every day or every other day or once a week, which is a great strategy, by the way. So if you have a sermon and you preach it on Sunday, I know for me, especially, it's always the Lord, the way he works things. My favorite ones are typically the ones where like the audience was half of what I expect, right? It's always I'm like, I didn't think it was going to be a low weekend, but it was. It's frustrating, right? It's like I worked so much on this sermon.
I was like so into it.
And it's like I rarely like them. And this was the one I liked. And now you guys didn't show up. So what I like to do is, let's say I preach this on Sunday. Well, I still have that sermon in me. I still feel like I can repackage it. So sometimes I take a minute clip of it and I form a whole story around it in a vlog, which I love to do, and my viewers love when I do that. But also, I just say, okay, let me repackage it. How would this work on a live stream? And so I just think through, like we were preaching through 1 Thessalonians last month. So I thought, hey, everybody's talking about the rapture. Let me just talk about, hey, the title, is the rapture true? Or is the rapture real? And then for 30 minutes to an hour, I use kind of my structure for my sermon, but also I'm looking at the comments. And so I'm allowing those comments to change my direction, and I bring it back. And so it teaches me, like, here's what people are thinking on the fly. Like, here's my sermon that I had. I never had feedback in the middle of it, but on live I do. And so when they bring, just kind of like sometimes you don't go after every tangent, but sometimes it's like, that's really helpful. I never thought about it. Let's work through this thing together. So it's been a really helpful way to start kind of think on my feet, but also repackage it, not in just a preaching way, but like this, like I'm talking to you through the camera. I'm looking at your comments. Let's work through this thing together. So that is one strategy a lot of pastors have been implementing. It's super helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea. And we were chatting before the show. I don't think it's new. I think folks like you have been out there talking about it for a long time. Maybe 10 years or more of churches do all this work to prepare a lesson for a Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. And they're going to preach for an hour, and they spent hours and hours prepping for that and studying and writing and all this kind of stuff. And then it's done in an hour.
Yep.
And it's over. Right. And maybe they recorded it, and maybe it's on YouTube, or maybe it's on their website. But it kind of dies at that point. And I love the idea of kind of repackaging your content that you preach on a Sunday and in using it online. So what else, how do you do that? You're probably ahead of the game. So you preach. What other things do you do with all that content throughout the week?
Yeah. So I love repackaging content. So one thing, I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, and a lot of it is just from my sermon series in the past, which that's not new. I know a lot of people have done that. So that's one thing I'm passionate about. Another, again, is vlog. So let's just say last week I talked a lot about grief. So let's say I come up with a story, and I kind of maybe I call it Trey, because my name's Trey. So I look at a story from my past, and then maybe talk about a moment of grief that I had. So I just kind of journey through them with that. I'm taking the camera around, I'm talking to my wife, and then I show a clip, like a minute-long clip from my sermon. That is the line, which I think my line was, larger belief does not lessen the grief. So just because you believe in Jesus, that actually doesn't mean it lessens your grief at all, but it does strengthen the hope. So that's the line. So now I'm going to find that clip, 30 seconds to a minute, that normally people just post to Instagram, which do that for sure, and caption it. But also, how can you fold that in the middle of a grander story in vlog format on YouTube? And so then just kind of wrestling through that after. And so that's just, the story. So the story structure that I tell all my people in my course, there has to start with the tension. There has to be something that bothers people, something that they can identify with. Grief, everybody can identify with it. But how can I, in 15 to 30 seconds to a minute, make a really impressive video that describes the grief, either that I'm going through, that everybody goes through, and then leave that tension there. So I always tell people on YouTube, this is key. Grabbing a tension is what grabs attention. So you have to identify it right away. The worst thing, and I hate it, and so many people do on YouTube, they start out, hey guys, I'm Trey Van Camp. I'm here in Queen Creek, Arizona. I planted it. Nobody cares. just jump into it,
Yeah.
Hey guys, I hope you subscribe, hit the like. They would really help. No, stop it. Right. People are already leaving. And so I tell my people, and I've actually recently, if you guys go to my channel, I did a live, I was analyzing one of my recent vlogs, and 70% retention is like the golden standard. Like if you can hit 70% retention, that's really impressive. And what you're doing, keep doing it. So I had a video recently that was like 74%. So I was like, okay, guys, let's dissect this. Why did I get 74% of people to watch all the way through? Right. And so that's another thing. So many people from COVID, they just kept talking about like, look at all these numbers, and Facebook inflates them like crazy. 1 second counts as a view. YouTube, it's a lot harder to get a view. You got to go in the analytics. Just because people see it for 3 seconds doesn't mean they were impacted by your ministry, right? And so YouTube's even harder because Facebook, you can accidentally stumble upon it and it'll count as a view. YouTube, they don't count it until you click in there, and start watching it. But anyway, so we talk a lot about that. So I start out with tension, and then it's the intervention. So this is me as the character looking for ways to answer that problem that I've established in the beginning of the video. So a lot of times the intervention is wrong. Like I'm looking for an answer and I'm falling, like I'm failing. It's really important. There's a great book, I think it's called the Homiletical Plot by Eugene Green. It's about preaching, but it really works for video telling, for storytelling, because he says for too often we never share the process, we just share the answer. And I think for storytelling, it's the process. Will this work? Oh wait, it doesn't. Will this work? Oh wait, it doesn't. And a lot of sermons, they need to do that way. We preach in such a way where we don't struggle with the audience. We need to struggle with them and go, what is the world saying is the answer? Is there legitimacy to this? Let's dive into this. Let's dissect this. And so storytelling is tension, and then it's intervention. So it's you looking. So a lot of times it's me FaceTiming or Zooming somebody who's ahead of the journey for me. It's my sermon clips or whatever. And then it's an invitation. So somehow you end kind of bringing it around and saying, hey, join in this journey with me. You do this as well. Comment below. How are you going to try to implement that this week? Or like, hey, let's do a 21-day journey together where we do this every day, or whatever it is. And so those are actually how I set up my sermons, and it's how I set up my YouTube videos. And I think it's a really good structure. It keeps people engaged and they know where you're going, but they also don't know how it's going to end. So they have to keep watching.
So you circling back to kind of repurposing stuff. So you take your sermon, then you take like a minute out of it and kind of elaborate on it, and all the things you were just describing. Yeah. You're talking about doing the live kind of style. So you've got the recorded kind of vlog style, but then there's a live kind of version of some of that pastors could do. Do you take stuff and cut it up for social media and kind of, go with some of that micro content as well, and do a bunch of that throughout the week?
Yeah. So right now, my answer is no. I'm peeling everything back to kind of change my strategy for 2022. But the quick answer is yes. I think it's what everybody needs to do. I do feel like people think that's enough, and maybe it is. And I think it's more than a lot of people what they're doing. Yeah. But when I'm talking, I'm like, I want to get creative on top of it, like throw it in the middle of a whole story and stuff. But so I am a person who does a lot of one-liners, a lot of catchy statements, and so sometimes I do it in like a 30-second, minute long, like an Instagram reel. And then also I do a photo with my quote on it. And so we repackage it different ways. But I will say this, those clips work really well on Facebook and Instagram. But I haven't found much success with a lot of our people when they just upload a sermon clip to YouTube, unless you're like incredible and you're raking in a lot of views already. Those just don't seem to perform well. So learning that too. Okay, sermon clips just being by themselves work great in the right platform. YouTube's not one of them. So that's been hard for us. So it's been a constant game of trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And so that's, that it never ends, just trying to figure out that game.
Yeah. What did you say earlier? Cracking the algorithm or figuring out the algorithm?
I've been telling a lot of people, if algorithm was a demon, I would just, in the name of Jesus, cast it out, because it has been the source of so many of my pains and issues.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. What about on the writing side? Do you sort of transcribe sermons and or blog on them or any kind of that? Or do you stick to the video because that's what you're most passionate about? Yeah, I'm trying to stick to my strengths. From what I hear, blogs, I don't read any blogs, and I'm a reader. I read a lot of books. Last year I read 100 books.
This year I'm at like pace for 70. So like I'm a reader when I tell you that. Like I love to read, but I don't know. There's just like a disconnect for me in blogs. So what I have found though is some people, they just get a great photo and then their blog is just their Instagram post, is their caption. And so I think there's something really smart about that. We do have somebody at our church that is gifted in writing. She's going to be the one editing my book. So we're trying to figure out how to empower her, on our church page. But yeah, I just stick with video and podcast because that's kind of my wiring. Although I'm leaning more and more. I don't manuscript my sermons, but it's close to it. And I'm trying to do that in order to strengthen my writing skills for my book that I'm writing. But yeah, I probably can't speak into that too much. I haven't really exercised that muscle in the public world yet.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned podcasting. So is that something you're doing related to sermon content, stuff like that? Or is that a whole different side of the creative you coming out?
Yeah. So I'm video first, and then I try to repurpose. Okay. So if I had my vlogs are called Document Treys, and then my lives are called Q and Treys.
Okay.
So I love my name.
I like this. We're getting more into it now. You got your different tracks. So you got your vlogs, you got your lives. Yes.
And so those are like the main two. And then I used to have I used to do like a leadership videos, and I would call it Entrepreneur. And I was like, okay, I'm reaching now. So anyways, so for the Q and Treys, like I have hour-long conversations with somebody I interview, or I'm just riffing and I'm talking about the Bible. So when I'm done with that, I take that into an MP3 version and I put it to the Trey Van Camp podcast. So I've actually gone the route, and this could be encouraging to people as well. A lot of people ask, do you upload straight up to your church channel or do you make a personal? That's a huge question when pastors reach out to me in this beginning this journey. There's a couple of reasons that I've gone the Trey Van Camp route, the personal brand, which I don't like saying, and I know a lot of people are turned off by that, but it is what it is. The personal brand route versus just going under the church banner. Unless you're like a huge church, with that huge platform, I think it's helpful to go personal because, first of all, personal is more powerful than professional. And so I identify more with Frank Berry than I do with Life Community Church at Wellspring or whatever the name is, right? So like there's an automatic connection here. So that's step number one. But also, and I hope this doesn't happen to me, but you move sometimes. You change jobs. And if you're the one who is making the videos, you're editing it, you're doing all of it, keep it in-house so that when you move, it moves with you. Right. Like I have 5 years of videos. I would hate to give up if the Lord ever called me somewhere else.
Yeah. And you probably have like the sermons under the church, right? It's like kind of the sermon, and that makes sense. But these other things, I get it. It could be,
the micro content, like when it's a sermon clip, it's on the church page. The sermons are on the church page. A lot of stuff's still on the church page, but my visual, my storytelling and all that extra stuff, it's on my page.
Right. And I can see how, people could debate kind of which way to go with that. And,
Yeah. So I try to keep it real clean. So all the money it's my personal money that I use to buy my cameras, to buy my microphones, all of that. That way, like I have a Patreon set up and it just goes to me and I don't feel bad at all about it. I'm not having to have it go through the church. And then to me, it's just my own side business, which I think is helpful.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. How did COVID in the last, almost 2 years,
isn't that crazy?
Year and 3/4, show up for you with this stuff? Like every church went online and kind of was, whether they were online or not, they were forced online and they were forced to figure out going live and doing pre-recorded or not. And then I think that led a lot of churches down the rabbit hole of like, how do you use social better? Again, all these things that people have been kind of talking about for years, but COVID forced everybody to go figure it out to some level. And I think a lot of churches got better. They may not be pros at it, but they got a lot better.
Yeah.
I just imagine someone like you that was already doing this for 5+ years, really, like, did you get a lot more views? Did you get a lot of people reaching out? Did you get what happened for you related to, helping churches do this?
Yeah. So my church, we were already used to all of that. Like we were always online. So like not a tremendous change. I would say though, that what we did, we actually pre-recorded stuff and then for our sermons. Back then when we were just online, like we would begin the first minute of the whole service showing a preview, and it was like the big crescendo of my sermon, and then it would go to worship. So we got really creative with that, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But a lot of pastors finally started reaching out to me, pastors that I've told for a long time, hey, you need to get in on this. And so I was really busy. I actually made, during that time, I think the first 16 weeks of COVID, I made a weekly documentary. So I filmed just a little bit every day, and it was my journey of helping other pastors and other churches kind of get on board with COVID. I was busy, man. Like every day I was taking in phone calls. I was trying to describe to people what they should do. The problem is a lot of pastors, at least that I was dealing with, they wanted to change, but they're too lazy to do it themselves. And so I was eventually like, dude, I can't help you. Like, this takes work. It's not just an idea. Like, you got to go and do it. You got to edit it. And I would say the biggest disappointment that I experienced, I thought people would then go, okay, I'm going to make not just Sunday service content. I'm going to make content that's personal. We're going to go behind the scenes. We're going to make live podcasts, that interviews with people's questions and stuff. Mm-hmm. And people just kept thinking, how do I just want to take video of my Sunday service and push it out to the world. And I was so disappointed by that. I was like, I thought when you saw this opportunity, it was more than just casting your sermon. Like I legitimately thought everybody was already going live on Sundays, weren't you? Right. Like, what in the world? And so I was shocked by that. And so I was disappointed. And still, like, people are like, man, this guy, he's really creative. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let me go check him out. All he does is just, I need to be careful, but all he does is just like his Sunday service. I'm like, isn't everybody doing that? Like, How is that creative? So that was just kind of a shocker to me.
But shockingly, to your point, most people weren't doing that.
Right. I couldn't believe it.
COVID actually made them go do that. It was the catalyst for people going online or going live and trying to figure that out, right? And how do you do this?
So we were operating in totally different worlds. I was here thinking, okay, you wanted to make Gary V, Casey Neistat content, and they're like, no, we just want people to see us on Sunday. I was like, got it. Totally different conversation here.
Now, was there any bright points for you, right? Because you're like, I don't know how to put it, right? But you're in a different category because this stuff is hard, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're, not the mega church with a big staff, you're doing it, and maybe it's just you that's producing. Like you're doing everything, and that just takes a lot of effort. It takes some skill. You got to learn skills along the way. And I just think, some people just go, man, this isn't my thing. But did you see any shining stars or good examples of man, this church really got it, or this pastor really got it and has changed even coming out of COVID?
Yeah, certainly. I do have quite a list of people that, and honestly, a lot of them, they were people that were kind of joined my courses and followed me on Patreon before everything went down. Mm-hmm. And they just use this as an opportunity. They finally could convince their people, like, hey, we've been saying this. Can you donate to these cameras that we've been trying to get for a while? Right. So I really found the people that succeeded were those who wanted to do it beforehand and were putting those baby steps forward. It's just that people finally put budget around them because now they could see the importance of it. So that would definitely, there's some bright spots. One of my friends from COVID, he was in my course, I think in 2019. And then when everything, I hung out with him the last week of reality before everything went crazy in San Diego. Well, he blew up. I think he has
in San Diego?
Yeah.
The motherland? That's amazing.
Yeah, dude, that's my vacation spot. So he actually now has 300,000 followers on TikTok. He makes chai. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's called Cross-Cultural Christianity, but he just makes chai and talks about Jesus, and he does incredible stuff. And a lot of that we were talking about content strategy, and he was trying to make YouTube videos, and they were good, but just nobody would see them. And so when TikTok came around, he just jumped on it, and he used a lot of our storytelling principles, but then applied it to TikTok. And he has a book deal with a huge publishing company already. Like, he's killing it. It's really cool. That's a big bright spot for sure.
Yeah. That's super cool. Well, I mean, I guess to kind of, we could talk about other stuff too, if you want to jump into more things that you're doing, because I find this stuff fascinating. But I'm thinking for the pastor that's listening to this is like, man, how do I get started? Like, what do you when you're coaching people up, like how do you get them going, and how do you get them into the edit? I feel like the recording might be one thing, but the editing side is a whole nother.
It's a whole nother beast. It really is a whole nother beast. So I do encourage people, you can do all this on your phone. And so I actually tell people AVL is the priority. So audio, invest in that first.
Yeah.
Then better video, then lighting. It doesn't matter how good your video camera is. If your lighting's bad, then it's just going to look terrible. So it's a lot of baby steps. So I send them, I'm not the one-stop shop for everything. So I say like, hey, here's Peter McKinnon. He has a lot of good tutorials on how to edit in Adobe Premiere Pro. Here's this guy. Here's that guy. It's a lot of work, and I have a lot of sympathy, but also it's like, hey, there's all these people that are doing crazy editing where there's transitions, and, you know, I've done this before too. Like there's two of me on the same, you know, in the same video, and all that's fun. You don't need that. Like you just need iMovie and just cut, you know, from one scene to the next. Editing gets fun, but at the end of the day, if there's no story there, it doesn't matter how creative the video looked. So I try to really encourage people. I look more at the 30,000 foot level. How do you tell a story? Okay, great. Go on Google, research for 2 hours which editing software do you want? How do you cut and paste? And how do you, you know, and then move on. So we talk a little bit about songs and stuff, but all that, you know, I think you figure it out in trial and error. But that's the hard part. Like I've for the longest time tried to convince people like it's not hard. No, it's hard. Like if you want to do this, it's going to take a long time. And there's no other way around it. If you're lucky, you have like a 17-year-old kid that really is a digital native, and he's been editing videos already, and empower them. We keep thinking about how do we get more kids workers and all this stuff. Well, start also asking, we need more video editors at our church. And I think you'd be surprised how many there are.
Yeah. Or whether they are and they're established, or they're just younger and they're just into it because they've been doing it on their phone and they're making TikTok videos and whatnot. So they're not like a pro video editor or whatever, but like they actually are good at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause they're just doing it on their phone already, and they're comfortable in that. A lot of it's just being comfortable with whatever the app is or the tools that are out there.
Yeah. It really just takes a few hours to just kind of understand the basics. And then I think it's just, you go from there. That was me. I'm all self-taught. I never took a class for video stuff.
Yeah. And it's surprising how much you can do on your phone. If you go get the newest iPhone, like, the video camera is pretty awesome. And, you know, to your point, lighting and audio and all this kind of stuff. But if you're just getting started, you can do a pretty good job just with that phone, and then learning some basic editing on your phone.
Absolutely. And I tell people, hey, like when I do ads sometimes for our church, I have a nice camera. I use my phone because personal is more powerful than professional. It actually grabs their attention. When you're on TikTok, which I'm not because of productivity, and it just, you know, whatever I know I'm terrible. I should be more, you know, innovative, but I know my limits. With TikTok, I actually noticed this: when the camera quality looks really good, it's more than likely an ad. So you skip it. But if the camera quality is just kind of normal iPhone, you give it a chance. So I'm like, guys, especially depending on which platform you're on, sometimes your phone is better than the nice Sony camera. So that is really liberating. So again, that's why I always go back to, it's the story.
Right.
It's the storytelling. How do you grab their attention? How do you bring them to Jesus? You know, so that's what I'm passionate about.
I love just maybe circling it back, like you preach a sermon, and then you kind of extend that via your vlog or the Q&A by, you know, taking a clip of it.
Q&A. You don't, I'm just messing with you.
My fault.
Just messing with you, bro.
I'm going to get it right.
That's lesson number 2. Number 1 for a YouTuber, you got to push your name. You got to make them remember, or else it's all a waste.
You don't have a sign behind you that has like your YouTube channel. Like that's a fail right there.
I know. I am failing right now. You know, I'm still a pastor. I still, you know, believe in John 3, you know, he must increase, I must decrease. So that's funny.
But I mean, I think just again, like I love those two ideas because I feel like every pastor could do that, right? They could, in a simple form, preach, take a clip, elaborate on it on a video that they do at home, do a Q&A. I mean, shoot, get a couple members of your church and jump on a live with them doing a QA together and post it. Like some of this stuff is not, although it is work, it doesn't have to be.
It's
crazy.
not rocket science.
And you can start small and it'll be really bad at the beginning, but do it for 5 years and you'll be surprised
Yeah.
how much better you get, right? And
Yeah,
how
you'll
much it
be on
starts to
the
pay
Modern
off.
Church Leaders podcast if you do it for 5 years.
Bro, we're just going to keep rolling. And the pandemic, just start interviewing people.
Yeah, I love it.
Too good. Well, where should folks go to check out your vlog and even your course? You mentioned kind of having some courses and whatnot. I think that'd be a great resource to send people to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the biggest two places to reach out to me are YouTube, just Trey Van Camp, like you're camping in a van. That's how you spell it. There's no K in there. It's just Van Camp. And then also same thing, but for Instagram. So those are the two places I interact with people the most.
Love it.
I would push vlogyourministry.com, but it's actually fully, so that's where my courses have lived in the past. I'm doing a full overhaul. I'm like trying to figure out how to really help people. And so I'm changing the structure of how much it is and how many. So no course to push today because it's totally under construction, but
Just
I would
go
love to
subscribe
connect
to
via
Trey Van
YouTube.
Camp on YouTube. That's
I'd
what
appreciate
people need to
that.
do. Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, well, I think that's a great sort of ending because then people can check out what you're doing and how that's, relating to your work at the church and being a pastor and all that kind of stuff. And I love that you said you kind of documented church planting, like from your perspective. I think that's a super cool, I don't know, like just behind the scenes look that probably a lot of church planters have never even, experienced unless they've got like a buddy that could tell stories.
True. Right. Yeah. I'm super grateful. I was able to document that part early for sure.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Trey, man, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Good times. Everybody watching or checking out the recording, appreciate you guys. Come back next week for another episode of Modern Church Leader. See you guys.